Welcome. My name's Courtney. Thanks for coming along to Soils for Life's Cropping Convos. This is the second round that we've hosted, and we're pretty excited about how the format's turning out, and we're very delighted to have so many great speakers joining us this season, including Bec, who I'll introduce you to in a second. Just a recap of Soils for Life, who we are. Our mission is to support Australian farmers to regenerate soils for resilient businesses, landscapes, and communities. And we do this through events like tonight's, but we also have a bunch of really amazing case studies on our website, including a small case study on diet and Ian Haggerty, who Bec will talk about a little bit more about their farm. And we also have a bunch of cropping discussion groups. We've got a WA cropping discussion group for anyone in WA, also South Australia, and there's a Victorian and a Queensland group. So please reach out if you're interested in joining one of our cropping discussion groups. And then we've also got a podcast, and we do all sorts of different events and activities, which you can find out more about on our website. This project is part of our Cropping Resilience project, which I'm managing. It's obviously aimed at grain growers, but we might have, people from all different sorts of industries here tonight. So welcome. And you can find out more about this particular project on our website once again, or sign up to our newsletter, and you can find out more about what we're doing and the events coming up. Housekeeping for tonight. Bec's going to present for 10 to 15 minutes on her experience and some of the main principles of Johnson Su composting and her approach. And then it's going to open up to Q&A. So please type your questions in the chat, and then we'll go through the questions in order. And for some of the more complex questions, I'll invite you to come off mute, and you can have more of a conversation with Bec. But please be mindful of allowing everyone a chance to speak, and please stay on mute when you're not talking. But leave your video on. We love to see everyone's faces. And we are going to try and keep to time. It's 7 p.m. where I am. I think it's 5 knockoff time where Bec is. So we'll be wrapping up after the hour's up. Okay, I'll hand it over to you, Bec. Thank you so much. As you've all probably seen, Bec is the mother of many Johnson Sus, and I came across Bec at the Nutrisoil event, Wormfest, over here near Albury. So I was excited to bring her into this. And Bec's over in WA, and I'll hand it over to you, Bec, now to give us more of an overview of your backstory. Are you right to?
Yeah, I think so. You've got me. Yep. Well, thanks so much for having me. I just want to quickly acknowledge that the country that we're living and working on is Balladong and Kalamaya country, which is part of the Noongar nation. We take our stewardship here very seriously and work closely with our partners, our Indigenous partners. So a bit of a shout out to them if any of them are listening. I hope I said it right. I'll just duck down here and share my screen.
Thank you.
I might need to sneaky let my dog out. There we go. Okay, so this is just an early photo of the top of one of our Johnson Sus early in the process, and just really loved the fungi happening on the top of it. So let's launch in. And is it going to change screens? No, it's not. Okay, technical difficulties. There it goes. So I thought with the 10 to 15 minutes, what I'll do is just quickly go through why we use Johnson Su, how we build our bioreactors at scale, because we are cropping. There's 65,000 acres of pasture and cropping country. my daughter Rachel's on the tractor at the moment because we've had some late rain, so she's still putting in some crop as we speak, and so I'm not sure what our numbers are up to now. I think it's in the vicinity of 15,000 hectares that's going in of cash crops and cover crops. So yeah, so we build a lot. Thought I'd go through how we make our mix and touch on the ongoing care using what we call the black gold. There's a photo later on that you can see how dark it is when it comes out as a finished product. Some Johnson Su studies that have been done by Dr. David Johnson and his wife, and some of our paddock observations as well. So I think if I don't talk too much, I should be able to get through that in the time. So while we're using Johnson Su, it allows us to make a really high quality fungal dominant compost on farm. And we're using raw materials that have 30 years of epigenetic improvement because they've come through Ian's natural intelligence practices. So everything that goes into our Johnson Su's is regeneratively managed, regeneratively grown through those natural intelligence practices, which we hope that makes our Johnson Su compost really suited for our environment because we're using aspects of our environment to create it. Digby. So I've got a feral cat problem when he's barking at the door. So we're using our compost as a compost extract as a seed dressing, and it goes out in our foliar sprays to support living soil. And we're seeing that supporting germination. I'll share a story from this season later on. Our observations and the science do line up. We're noticing things, and Ian will talk to. I'm really sorry, I paused. Out. Sorry about that. He was just going to keep barking. You can see one out the door. So the science, talking to people like Nicole Masters, Walter Yenner, there's a whole myriad of people that Diane are on the phone to often. We're looking at what we're seeing here, and they're able to put the science to it. So we're seeing that the Johnson Su helps increase the biodiversity of the soil biology, which we saw when we had Frank come out and take some incredible photos. We're seeing the building of soil structure in our brittle environment. There's a photo there that showing those aggregates forming under a native grass. We're seeing huge improvements to water infiltration and holding capacity. And we've had a few heavy downpours and we're not seeing any soil movement, which has been fantastic. Through our crazy summer that we've, very, very long summer, we've had some powerful hot easterly winds, and we're finding that we're not getting the wind erosion and the dust pulling up on our place. We are getting top dressing from next door though. So it's also looking to draw down and sequester more carbon. We find that we're maintaining plant growth for longer during the season, pushes our harvest out, but means we're really filling those grain heads for that little bit longer. And we're seeing that it's stimulating the dormant native seeds in the soil profile. And that's just the beginning. Limited time, I could have gone on all day. So moving on, our why. I grabbed these pointers off the Regeneration International website because these spoke to us. So I thought, oh well, share these ones. So it's the soil carbon sequestration. We've got data to prove that we're doing that in a semi-arid environment. The increases to crop yield, there's some fantastic studies if anyone wants to look online that David Johnson has been doing over the past few years. The increased soil nutrient availability, if you look at the soil testing, nutrient availability, and then you look at what's in the plant through tissue testing and stuff, and they don't quite add up because it's the microbiology is making them available to the plant, where without that biology, they remain locked up in the soil. That water retention, it's a biologically diverse compost, and I'll talk to that a bit more later on. It's nutrient rich. It produces a low salinity compost, and in our environment, we are farming in amongst a chain of natural salt lakes, and WA has horrendous trouble with salt. So having a low salinity product, helps combat that. And then we're seeing improvement in germination and growth rates. Okay, building the frame. One of the biggest questions I was getting asked during Wormfest and other people that are, calling for advice. The first one is how do you build it? And this is what we do. We've got many IBCs floating around that we can convert. So I thought I'd just run through what we do. So first of all, the bladder is removed. And as you can see from that first photo there, we cut 6 holes in the base that are just slightly larger than our PVC pipe. We line it with shade cloth, and we've discovered a fantastic trick is to actually unscrew the frame from the pallet base and wrap your shade cloth or whatever you're using, something that doesn't break down quickly, around that, and then screw it back on. Because we use these season after season, when we flip these upside down to get out our compost, we're not having to rebuild it. The lining stays intact, so we can just tip out our compost, then turn it up the right way and start all over again. The pipes, we do have some holes drilled in them, but at the end of the day, they don't stay in for very long at all. We have them on our crossbars, and we've worked out that if we have those crossbars attached at one point so that they can pivot, it really helps for getting them out when the time comes. And also we just tech screw them to the top of the frame. Otherwise, when we're filling them, they split apart, and then you get areas of your compost that are too far away from the air. So to keep them nice and upright. I think really that's the most important things that we've come across, is that making sure it's fastened down, and that it is something that we can use year upon year to save from rubbish. When we make our mix, we're doing about a ratio of 2 parts manure to 3 parts multi-species homegrown hay. And then we're adding water to 70%. And I don't know if everyone's able to see that fourth photo. That's, for me, it's tucked in behind our smiling faces. Gives you a bit of an idea of the consistency that it's coming out at. That's coming out of the cattle mixer through their auger system and straight into the bucket, which on the telehandler, which we use because we're building up to 30 at a time. Some quick photos of tipping it in. As you can see on that left-hand picture there, that pipe on the side has got a bit sitting on the top. We find that quite handy. We leave it there until we've got it completely filled, and then we pull that off. It just stops extra stuff falling down inside the tubes and limiting that air. So it gives you an idea of what they look like and how much we stack them above the top of the IBC. All right. Here is a photo of Joe. Joe came over from Uruguay and stayed with us for a while. And he had the joy of helping me pull them out. He had the height, as you can see. I'm having trouble there, but we found that with that little bit of pivot, you can lift one side up and sort of jimmy it up so that you don't hurt the holes too much. 2 photos there of how much fungal activity is happening down inside the holes just after we've pulled them out. And we keep ours inside an old aircraft hangar, actually. I'm just going to see if, am I able to move that? So, there we go. I'm just going to put us on the other side for a second. So some of the critical things and things that we're still having to troubleshoot constantly is the watering. We've got sprinklers on a timer that we can put on in the morning and at night, because we have to monitor that water consistently. And as the weather changes, we get easterly winds here that are very, very hot in the middle of summer, and it blows straight in the front of that shed. So we have to sometimes hand water and to top up to keep that moisture, because once they've dried out, there's not much you can do to bring them back. When the compost gets below about 27 degrees, that's when we add our composting worms. If it's any warmer than 27 degrees, the worms cook. So yeah, something to keep in mind when you first pull those pipes out. I think these ones came out about day 4, just because we're busy on the farm and we didn't get back to them this next day. But you can see the steam coming out of those 6 holes. It's quite incredible. If you put your hand down inside there, it's very, very warm. So with the maturing of them, we let ours mature anywhere between 9 to 12 months. We prefer 12 months. At 22 weeks, your top 80% only has 57 different species of bacteria. But at 60 weeks, you're looking at 99%, 99 species in that top 80%. And that's from Dr. David Johnson's testing. So we want as many species as possible to get that diversity as high as possible. This is our bit of our compost extract. We've got 2 extractor tanks that are custom built. If anyone needs more information or wants to ask questions on that later, because there's quite a lot to those tanks. And that is that right side picture is I've picked up a handful of our Johnson Sioux compost and held it in my hand and squeezed it. You can actually make out my fingerprints on that. That's the consistency that we are looking for before we put it through our extract. It's quite amazing, and it smells beautiful and earthy, and you know that it's well aerated. It's a fantastic product. Okay, we call it the black gold. So testing it, testing the quality, we can do Di, Rachel and I have all done a course in using the microscope to do a qualitative test for our biological diversity. And we've also got a product that we can test the fungal bacterial ratio. We are chasing higher fungal ratio. As a seed dressing, the compost extract, we're using 2 of the IBCs. I didn't give you a weight per se because each IBC, composts down, depends on how, if we loaded one up slightly more than the others. But 2 in 7,000 litres, and it's applied to the seed using the pickle pump immediately prior to seeding. So the pickle pump just hooks into the auger as it goes up into the truck and then out to the tractor. And then as a foliar spray, the compost extract we have a compost and a Johnson Sioux extract in 20,000 litres. So it's more dilute than the seed dressing. And that's applied to the crop down the tube at seeding, and also as a foliar spray using the boom spray. Just quickly go through this. How am I going for time, Courtney? I'll just keep going. You're on mute.
Perfect. We've got a couple of questions coming through if I could ask those of you. Adam has just asked, what was the mix ratio between hay and manure that you said?
2 to 3. So 2 parts manure to 3 parts multi-species hay. If you look at, there's lots of stuff online. Some people, depending on their raw materials, will have to play with that a bit. That's just what we've found works really well for us with what we've got. Our sheep aren't drenched or anything. They've got a really very, very healthy microbiome, gut microbiome. And so we're also taking advantage of that. Someone earlier in their journey, or if they're total croppers and they're having to get manure in from an outside source, might need to play around to find the sweet spot there. Especially if they've, the manure's got residue of being wormed or things like that, that could affect. I'm not saying it will, could. We've just got the advantage that we don't have to worry about that. Was there?
Thank you. Feel free to comment, Adam, if you had a follow-up question. My question was, what was the microbial or microscope course that you did?
It was with they're in a West Australian group. Earthwile, yes, that's the one. Earthwile. Yeah. Cool. That the ladies are absolutely fantastic, very, very passionate, and we did it was a multiple day course. It was well worth our while. And we will send down samples to her to test them for us as well. And she'll send back very in-depth analysis of what's in our compost or soil, or depending on the sample we're sending down.
And Catherine has asked what your method for assessing the bacteria fungi ratio is.
We have a testing kit that we've bought online. I think it comes out of America, that comes with an app on your phone, and it gives you a quick ratio. I think there's about 4 different styles of tests that you can do: soil, compost, extract, and another one. There was, I know, am I allowed to say the product?
Yeah.
So it's a microbiometer. So they're a bit, they are a little expensive, so we're very careful with what we decide to test, because otherwise I'd test everything. Get very excited. bit of a nerd with that. Yeah, how's that? Shall I keep going or
Yeah,
any
we'll
more
come back.
questions?
The next question is, at what rate do you apply the extract to the seed? But we can come back to that if you're
Okay.
breaking the flow of your prezzo.
Oh, yep, no, that's all right. I'll have to flick back through and try and remember, or it's coming up, one of the two.
No
Okie
worries.
dokes. So just the studies so that people know how fantastic the product is that you're creating on farm. And there is amazing stuff out there. Actually, the Lower Blackwood LCDC did a talk with David Johnson just recently, and it's well worth watching. He goes through a lot of data, and yes, it was very exciting. So basically, what the studies are showing is that the in-furrow application results in higher productivity than spreading it as a solid on the ground. And seed contact is required for optimal impact. So where we're doing the seed dressing pluses, the liquids going down into the furrow at seeding, we're ticking those boxes. And studies are showing that a 50-to-1 dilution in the furrow is sufficient. So that's 50 parts water to 1 part extract. As the fungal and bacterial ratio increases to more fungal, then you're getting more photosynthetic capacity of your plants, and then that's increasing your biomass and yield, and your quality, your nutritional quality as well. The A horizon in your soil will increase year upon year. He's finding that in his semi-arid context, New Mexico, he's saying improvement every single year, and we're seeing that mirrored here in paddocks that are cropped. We keep an eye on when they're being cropped year on year until their rest phase, and we're seeing that improvement in soil aggregation and infiltration, and that A horizon increasing over time. Increasing efficiency of carbon flow. They explain this really well on that Lower Blackwood LCDC podcast, and current percentage of ag systems is 11% of that carbon flow. If it drops down, your plant has to start working harder at improving the soil, like weeds do. So if your cash crop is really busy trying to repair the soil function, then you're losing all of that energy to improving the soil, which takes it away from producing biomass and seed or whatever it happens to be. So if we can increase that soil organic matter and increase that efficiency through the higher fungal ratios, therefore your plant's not having to work as hard to do jobs that as a cropper trying to make money. You really want your plant functioning in a way that's optimally creating the product rather than fixing the soil. In paddocks where we need to make a big impact, that's where we're using our cover crops, our multi-species cover crops, because that's exactly what they're there for. And then we have the added benefits. Sometimes we can cut that for hay or graze it, but the improvement to soil is paramount, and getting those fungal ratios higher in that soil profile. So you're increasing your soil fertility through improved carbon and nitrogen cycling, because you've got that biological system activated and working, oxidizing elemental metals, your phytohormone production, quorum sensing. We're seeing more evidence of that year on year as well. Fascinating stuff. Phosphorus stabilizers and nitrogen fixers are improving in soil as well. We're finding that as our soil improves, as our biology in the soil increases, and that diversity of biology increases, we've been moving away from the traditional winter weeds and getting more of those higher successional C4 grasses. We've got lots of native grasses coming up. I think last year or the year before, we had a native grass that none of us recognised. We had the experts at Deep Earth come out, and I think it took them 3 or 4 months to identify what the grass actually was, because it hasn't been seen this far south. It's usually much further north in the Gascoyne region. So now we don't know, did it used to be here and it's just come back because the soil's back to where it was, or we don't know. We don't know, but the sheep love it. So we suspect that perhaps it traditionally was here and that it's been eaten out in the past. So those lower fungal ratios end up with more winter weeds. So that's through Elaine Ingham's information that I borrowed that one. That having such an amazing product that you have 100% control of, you can produce it on farm, and then you're getting proven results like that. To me, it's a no-brainer. The photos on the side there, I took those photos just last week in very similar spots in the paddock. That's 3 completely different fungal fruiting bodies next to each other in a paddock that was cropped last year within the paddock. So we're thinking that the biological additives are working a treat. This is an observation that I made just last week. These mushrooms are coming up just in the lines where a crop was seeded last year. And this particular paddock has really saline conditions. I took a sneaky photo over the fence. I know my neighbour won't mind. That photo there is over the fence within, 6 metres of where we've got green growth and mushrooms growing. And the only difference is management and the use of those biologicals. I was astounded. I just haven't seen anything quite as profound. It just blew me away, that one. The story of the seed. So we had an early start. We put in our cover crops dry seeded started in March, and we had some rain, and we got germination, and then we were very excited. It was very, very dry season last year, and not much came up on these particular paddocks. And then we had 4 weeks of warm, above 30 temperatures and 0 rain, and the excitement of the green tinge diminished very quickly as it browned off, and we thought it was dead. Diane drove out and dug some up and popped them in a rubber glove on the dash of the car in the sun, and they baked for hours, and eventually they got home and they forgot about them, and the following day put them in some damp paper towel, which then they dried out again, and they have miraculously, after such hardship, have actually come back to life. And driving past those paddocks today, there is it's more than a green tinge now. It's definite multi-species cover crop emerging. And the only thing that we can put it down to is those seeds are supported biologically. And although they did have that first bit of germination, they stood on standby in the hopes that something was going to come along, and we did get a good rain, and it has got them going again. Another observation that I just couldn't believe. It was quite impressive, especially since I tried to kill them so much, not deliberately, but.
Do you mind if we get to another couple of questions, Bec?
Yep, go for it.
Where were we up to? Let me just check. We asked this one briefly before, but just a reminder, if you did know what rate you applied the extract to the seed.
Yeah. So it gets pumped through the pickle pump. So that's 1,000 litres. So we pump. So that initial 2 IBCs to the 7,000 litres, we decant that off into 1,000 litre shuttles. So when they're doing the seed dressing, that 1,000 litres does, I'd have to confirm with Ian, but 13,000 tonne is coming to mind, because I'm pretty sure that's what the truck holds. I'll have to check up on that one. Exactly what it is. It's not jumping into my head. I have spoken to Ian about it so many times. Yeah, I'll have to check on that one. So are you able to grab that person's details and we can flick them some information?
Yeah, feel free to just email me afterwards.
Yeah,
if you find the answer. I mean, with seed treatments in general, you're looking at 5 to 10 litres per tonne of seed. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right, but I would hate to get it wrong. So yeah.
How fresh is the manure that you're using? Is another question from Drummy.
Oh, okay. It's we get it from under our shed, our shearing shed. So we shear every 8 months. So we will be making Johnson Sue's in the next few weeks, if the stars align and we can borrow the cattle mixer. So we shore in April. So it's been sitting under the shed since April. Yep. And then when we're picking it up, we're really careful not to pick up sand. So because that just mucks up the filtration later on. So yeah, it's dry. It's dry, but under the shed, there is that white haze of fungi forming on some of the manure. So yeah, cool. Hopefully that helps.
Katrina and Steve have asked, have you had any failures or issues with toxicity?
No toxicity issues. Our biggest problem we have is the watering and keeping that moisture at 70%. Because if they do dry out, it's next to impossible to bring them back. So we've had a few holdover. We haven't used it all. So those older ones, we feed some sprinkler bran on them. We're getting bran back from the bakery that we supply grain to. He sends us back bran, so we're happy to close the loop there and feed the biology on the bran. They devour it. To try and kick them along for that bit longer. But yeah, that sort of 11, 12 months is the age of the ones that we're doing now, and they're just perfect. So yeah, it's good.
Cool.
Haven't had any toxicity issues. But we do test to make sure that we haven't accidentally ended up with a bacterial dominant. We won't use that.
Right.
It's only if it's fungal dominant.
But you haven't, have you had many bacterially dominated? Yeah. Okay.
No, no. The only time we get something that's bacterially dominated is if we've got a compost extract. We've had it in an IBC. It hasn't got used during seeding of the foliar, and so it's been held over, and we'll go, oh, we'll see what it's like, and it's like 100% bacterial, which is like, no. No. So,
yeah,
we don't use that at all.
Okay. Peter has asked, how long can the seed coating be on before planting? Thinking the maximum time, like what kind of time frame before it goes out into the zone?
We'll be doing our seed dressing as going up the auger into the truck. The truck goes out to the paddock and gets used in the next couple of days. Yeah, depending on if we're running two seeding rigs or not. So for us, it's put on and used, pretty quickly. We don't do a seed dressing and leave it on and put it back in the silo. We're seed dressing and using it fairly immediately. So I don't know how long you could leave it on there for. I suppose if it was dry, you could get away with it for a short while, but really we want that biology and that diversity. So yeah, I'd be using it quickly. That's just my opinion though. Someone more expert than me might know actual timings for that one.
Thank you. Roger has asked, I assume the 7,000 litre mixing tank just has a big agitator to mix it up. What size motor, how long to mix for?
Oh, okay, yes. So our extract tanks hold 20,000 litres. We've got a big stainless steel agitator in the middle. It's got a blade that runs close to the bottom of the tank and one sort of 2/3 the way up the tank. Air jets that go around the bottom that we run from an air compressor. The size of the motor that we use, I don't know. It's the motor that came with it. It's a fairly big agitator, so I guess that would depend on the size of your system. What we do is for a full compost extract, when we're doing 20,000 litres, we fill that nearly to the 20,000 litre mark with water. We drop in the compost or the Johnson Sue compost, and then we agitate that for 30 minutes, and we'll do the air in amongst that for 10 to 15 minutes, keeping an eye on it. Some of our compost, not our Johnson Sue so much, but one of our other compost products that we use will foam up and overflow the tank. So about 30 minutes of agitation, and then at least that to let it settle before you're running it through a filtration system and pumping it to where you need it to be. Otherwise you clog up your filter too quickly. And we use a red filter. Apparently that's how they're gauged, is by their colour. So yeah, we're using the red mesh filter, and that allows that product to be put out through the boom spray without clogging up the jets on the boom spray, as well as putting it down the tube at seeding.
Great. Roger, let me know if you had any follow-up questions. Peter has asked, are you using other composting methods, and how did the benefits compare with Johnson Sue?
Yes, We have got our own worm farms. We've got 2 worm farms at the moment that we're still sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Experimenting with. We've got one that's undercover in an old pig shed, and I'm really happy with how the worm castings are coming out of that right now. Our other one's out in the open. We're using that more as a breeding bed, but we're hoping to be able to start harvesting worm castings off them soon. In which case we'll run those through the same testing that we do for the Johnson Su's. The other composting, we're looking at doing a Jerry Gillespie static compost, and that's something else that we haven't got to the point where we're using that yet. We're still playing around with that. We're just finding the Johnson Su's are so efficient and fantastic in what they produce. We do need to up our compost building. At the moment, there's a fantastic guy that is producing a really high quality compost locally. Locally for us, I think he's 130 k's away, I think. But we've been using his compost for the bulk of our for the big brews that we do. And the theory behind that is the more diversity that we can put into our mixes, the better. So, I would love anybody that's trying any of the static composts, if they've got some fantastic tips, I would love them. So,
James has asked, have you done a trial to see if much higher rates of compost extract have had a benefit for more than 1 year?
Yeah, the year on year, the tractor people, as we call them, are doing different trials with different rates, and what we're finding, the thing that stands out the most is if you go back into a paddock the following year that's not been reseeded, the top photo there, what we're seeing is the native grasses and the growth that's coming back the following year are in those lines. So it's being supported by the biology left over from the cropping. That's a native grass, Paspalidium, that's quite palatable. The sheep love it, and it's not been sown. It's coming back in the lines where the biology is. One of the things that stands out most is wherever the tractor gets pulled up to do a seeding test, and they're checking to make sure none of the liquid lines are blocked. You can see that density of growth for multiple years afterwards. You can tell where a seeding test has been done for multiple years, because that extra compost that's gone in has supported that growth. So yes, using higher rates can increase what's going on biologically, and have ongoing effects year upon year. It's really one of those things that I love to do those sort of tests, because it's so contextual. We've got so many different soil types across the property here, that it's one of those things that you really got to test in your own context. But the evidence that I've seen is, yes, it does have ongoing effects, and it can increase growth as well, and colour, be greener.
Thank you for the question, everyone. Thank you for the questions, everyone. Jessica has shared that she's built her first Johnson Su, similar to yours, in an IBC, and it's now 6 months old. However, it did not turn thermophilic in the first few weeks. Is this an issue? No livestock on our farm for easy nitrogen component per common ingredient used by David Johnson. I filled my Johnson Sioux with 80% leaves and a little mowed cover crop hay.
Okay. Well, I've not tried it without a nitrogen component. I guess if it's breaking down, yeah, if you're getting a consistency of compost being formed, then it will be really interesting to see how that goes. Maybe trying to add a nitrogen in through green, adding in green sort of lawn clippings, or even some of the nitrogen fixing type plants perhaps could help replace some of that manure component. It'll be interesting to see. You'll have to let us know how it goes.
Jessica, did you want to follow up with anything there? Sorry.
No, that's all good. Thanks so much. Yeah, I'll be interested to see how it goes myself. It's looking okay, so we'll see.
And it's early days, 6 months. It's a baby.
Yeah, it's only halfway through, so got a bit more time. Thanks so much.
Yep, no worries.
Adam has asked, do you run through a filter before use? If so, what size? So that might be the red.
Yeah, the red mesh filter. We find that works for us so that it can go through the boom spray and not clog up everything. Yeah.
And Jordan has shared that the red is the 32 mesh, which allows biology to flow.
That's the one. Yes.
That's the one. Thank you, Jordan. Sarah, do you stack the different composts via the extraction process into each 20,000 batching tank?
Okay, can you read that one out for me again? Sorry.
Are you putting several different composts in the 20,000 litre batching tank?
Yes. So we so we will use the compost that we buy in from Dale Warnew. He makes a fantastic compost, and our own to do the 20,000 litre ones, which is what goes down the tube and the foliar spray. So yes. And we also make a food product, which is food for the biology, which is your Fulvix, Humix. This year we've got a new fish product that's delightful. I think the plants grow because they're trying to get away from the smell. And seaweed and a few other bits and pieces as well. So, but that can't get mixed with the compost extracts until the point of use. Otherwise, the biology in your extract starts feeding, and it will turn to jelly very quickly, which is very hard to clean out. So, and that just increases your numbers, your biology numbers by feeding them.
Sarah, let me know if that answers your question. Mick has asked, how do you keep all the fines in suspension, or do they settle out in the tank?
We do get some settling out in the tank. All of the biology in those extracts tends to stay stay in the liquid. It's the bigger particles that tend to settle out in the bottom. So that we clean out the extract tanks after about, I think it's 4, sometimes 5 brews, just to get rid of all of that. It goes out the back of the tank, and then I go and get it for the veggie garden. It's wonderful. But the majority of what we want in our extract remains in solution.
Do you know what rates you're putting out as a foliar, diluting with water and mixing any other products such as trace elements in? We're really getting into the detail now.
Yeah, now you're asking hard questions. I am not sure. That is another one I will have to send an email through and try and get Ian a spare 5 minutes to ask him. So yeah, we haven't started our foliar sprays yet this season. So yeah, I'll keep my eye out. I'll write that one down.
I can share these with you as well if that's helpful.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
And the Dalwallinu compost, are you able to share details about where you're getting that compost from?
That's all I know is that he's over there, and it's a fantastic product, and we support local wherever we can. Where the main part of the farm is here, we dive off in a couple of different directions to support local businesses in the towns closest to us, and the north property is closer to another town. So wherever we can support community by purchasing whatever it is that we need, we do. So because he's local and it's a fantastic product, yeah, we're doing our bit to keep communities rolling.
Yeah, great. At what stage of crop growth are you applying the foliar extract? Is that another question for Ian? Or
I think that's a great question for Ian. Yeah, because I suspect it also, because we're growing a diversity of cereals as well. So there's several wheat varieties. We've got several barley varieties, rye, amongst other things. So it would be specific for what is being grown, would be my guess. And I'm not sure if it changes with the soil type either. More of the sheep person, sheep and compost.
Roger has asked that Dr. Johnson recommends adding milk and molasses when making the extract. I may have that wrong, but do you guys skip this step?
Yes. We have tried a molasses product in our system this year, so we don't know what the outcomes of that is going to be. But yeah, I have heard milk being added, but it's not a product that we could easily get at a reasonable rate, I don't think. So we haven't found that it's necessary.
Cool. And just for clarity for Steve, you do a seed treatment, but then not apply the extract in furrow as you are planting, or are you doing both?
Both.
You're doing
both. Yeah. Yep.
And Helen and Hugo have asked what native grasses, maybe could you go into more detail about the native grasses that you're seeing return or increase?
Yeah, so one of them, we've got a red Paspaladium, which has a reddish seed, and I assume the other one's called green because it's got a greenish seed. They're coming back after cropping. We're finding with that biology, they're just springing up. They're a summer active. We've got the wallaby grasses coming up. The rare one was a type of panic, which hasn't been seen for a really long time. I've got a slide of all the different native grasses on a different PowerPoint. What else is there? They're the highest successional grasses that we're finding, and then there's lower ones. There's one called that we call troll grass because it looks like troll's hair from back in the 80s. So what we're finding is as the paddocks improve, we're seeing more and more of the higher succession native grasses coming back. Some of them, the Indigenous people that we've been speaking with have said that you can actually harvest those grains for food, and so that's something that we'd really love to explore. That's a very brief. That's popping into my head at the moment.
Thank you. We've just got 2 questions, and then we better wrap up and let you get back to your evening. Do you use Nutrisoil?
Yes. Yes, we do. Yeah.
And Adam has asked, do you need to be mindful of pump types and pressures? Are there any pressures that you can't exceed?
In regards to
maybe, I don't know, Adam, in the extraction process or foliar application?
In the foliar application, so speaking with Matthew, they're just running that the foliar application through a standard boom spray, exactly the same way as you would use a boom spray. So yeah, I'm guessing the pressure would be whatever the specifications are for that particular brand of boom spray.
Cool. Okay, one last question, because this is an interesting one from Sarah. Do you think the recycling of the covered in IVCs adds to the inoculation of your next batch? Or what is your maintenance of these in between batches? Do you keep some of last season's batch to inoculate next batch, or are you trying other ways?
Last time we did made our batches, we did do some trials where we did one set that was just the sheep manure and the multi-species hay. Then we did one that was had some of our old Johnson Sues put in as well, mixed up in there, so that was inoculated with previous Johnson Sues. And we did try one with Nutrisoil as well, and then sort of monitored the differences, or if there were any differences. It did initially affect how quickly it started to break down, but we found that once we hit sort of 4-5 month mark, they were very even across the control, and the Johnson Sue inoculated and the Nutrisoil inoculated. And then we sent those, we had Ellen from Earthwile come up and do those microscopic qualitative tests for us, and there wasn't much in it, to be honest, between the three. So I found that quite surprising, because I really thought the one that was inoculated with previous Johnson Sue might have beat them, but I think yeah, they're in the same space. They're exposed to the same airborne fungal spores, and yeah, so
yeah. That's promising to hear for us beginners.
yeah.
All right, well, we should wrap up, unless Bec, there are any other slides that you really needed to share.
I actually think that was the second last. Yep, there we go. Thank you.
Good.
It's the next slide. And there's my email address there. If anyone needed more information, and I'll chase up these questions with Ian too and send them through and chuck them in an email for everyone as well.
Thank you. I knew that this would be full of technical questions, so you did well. Thank you so much, everyone. And another big thank you to Bec. We really appreciate your experience and your generosity in sharing all of this with everyone. That's the end of our Cropping Convos round 2. So thank you again.